It looks like you guys about to do a number already.
Brother, can you turn down the music? Thank you. Alrighty. So, peace and blessings, everyone. Y'all made it. Y'all here. We here. That's what matters. Welcome to the new School of African American Thought that's put on by Solidarity Twin Cities. And so our mission is to engage people of African descent in their own liberation through historical, political, and cultural education. So that's what we do, that's what we're about here with Solidarity Twin Cities, and we do that through the new School of African American Thought. This year, so today is actually our last new school session of the year. I don't know if y'all can believe it or not, but yes, this is the last one of the year. And because this year we started something different. We decided instead of having monthly community forums, we have moved it to once a quarter. So I'm glad that y'all are able to be here. And anything else? I think that's it for that. So, you had a question? Okay, good. All right. So our slogan, which you see on the screen, this is call and response now, and this is our slogan that our elder Makbuel Kati, introduced to us, which stemmed from the Ghanaian political party there. And they talk about how progress is always sure, right? Meaning that it's sure because we're gonna keep fighting. We're not gonna stop. We're not gonna give up. We're here. And so when I say progress, you all will put your fist in the air. I don't care which, just sure. But I gotta say it with force. Don't be laughing over there. You gotta be ready because I'm gonna call y'all out. When we fight, we gotta bring the energy. Okay. So, progress.
Sure.
Progress.
Sure.
Yes.
That was tight, wasn't it?
I think that was the best one.
Exactly. I'm saying, give us some praise here.
Man. We representing, Yes. Elder will be. So, without further ado, by the way, my name is Dr. Shakita Kpetay. I didn't introduce myself, and I'm a member of Solidarity Twin Cities, and I'm also one of the organizers for the new school. I'm gonna hand it off to Sister Ngia to go into, our pre-discussion questions and the topic for this evening.
Hello, welcome to the new school. We have a next slide. All right, so tonight we're going to be really having a great opportunity to revisit a time that's very important in our history, the Civil Rights Movement, which actually spans quite a long time, even from the main period that we all know about. And so we're going to really engage you now in a time where you can talk to your neighbor at your table about these questions. We like to use a pedagogy where we sort of ground the lecture in what you already know or what you think about this topic, and then we can hear from the presenters. And so the first question is, how relevant is the Civil Rights Movement to our struggles today? Where do you see the similarities and differences among the civil rights from the 50s and 60s to now? How do those struggles differ, or how are they similar? And then is there a continuum with this struggle for human rights that we have been, our journey with the struggle? And then secondly, how do you commemorate something that is past but still present? Which is, that's like, sit with that for a minute, because we are often, having to relive. And I think a part of the presentation, and what Dr. Shakita and Rekhet, Sister Rekhet, are going to be bringing to us today from their trip to Birmingham is about that. what are some of the tensions that exist when you are commemorating, something that is past, but we know that those things reverberate and they pass down through generations. And so how do you do that? And think about yourself, even your own experience, your own personal family experience, and things that you have maybe wanted to commemorate, or maybe there's challenges with that as well. So we're gonna have you talk at your tables. You can kind of break off into small groups, and then we'll come back and see what you have to say. Thank you.
All right.
I'm Bonita, but they call me Bonnie. This is really funny. Well, and I work here. I'm the business manager here.
Oh, okay.
I was just talking to Howard Ellis, who's at the front desk.
Yeah.
We were just talking about this today, where I was just telling them, I talk a lot, so stop me. But just how my age, even though I'm not that old, but it was the cusp of when it was transitioning from the civil rights into after Martin Luther King died. And so just the difference of that happening and how what that experience was like, and then why the kids today don't connect to it, because they weren't there when that happened. They weren't able to experience that, I guess is what I'm saying.
And to add on to that point, since that era has passed, I don't think it's truly passed. To answer the question, I think history's always and will never not be relevant. I think that's the whole point of it. You need to remember. You have to remember it, because it is relevant at all times, whether you realize it or not. And a big part of it is that if people aren't really remembering how it was or how it actually was in reality, the forces that be are going to twist it to their own liking. Like we see this with Martin Luther King. They twist his words, conservatives being like, I agree with Martin Luther. He went like this, or that. And you're like, they'll twist the words if we don't remember it.
And it's filtered.
Yes, absolutely. They'll twist it, they'll grind it down.
And I'm just thinking about like today and how there's this push within the schools and even the universities not to talk about certain histories. And for me, I do think it's relevant because I consider myself an education historian in many ways, and I feel that it's not like it's over, that it is ended. It just looks differently. The struggle and the fight just looks differently, or the issues, the way it shows up looks different. But that we still have it there. So.
I know that I feel like
What about others?
the same kind of stamina that goes.
What are some of the similarities and differences?
I mean, it's like.
Well, just kind of like what you were saying, and I'll stop talking after.
No,
We were just talking, right? We were just talking about that, and like I said, when I was going to school, I went to majority white schools. It didn't bother nobody when the 2 and 3 paragraphs about black, African slavery, and all the white kids looked at me and was looking at, oh, you're from slavery, that didn't bother nobody.
Right.
But now all of a sudden it's a sensitive topic, like, oh, I don't want my kids to know the true history of how wealth was created for the privilege, because their kids might be offended, and so I really find that, and that's today, like they don't want, kind of like you're saying, repressing the true nature, and like I said, they wanted to stay at 2-3 paragraph in the history. That's what they want to keep. They don't want the truth to come out.
Yeah, small footnote.
Yeah.
Reference.
And just say you all were slaves and that was it,
Yeah, it's hard to think about the development of the United States without considering the role that black people played in it. Some historians say it's a second founding following the 14th Amendment, which had to do with at least removing the auction block. The 14th Amendment, which is the first time citizenship was defined in this country, and black men got the right to vote in 1870 with the 15th Amendment. And it is kind of a redo, given that the political violence that took place pushes off the voting rolls and it pushes out of economic opportunity. I don't know what DeSantis or anybody is talking about because you can't mention this stuff. And lastly, as Jesse Gopian said to us a few years ago, this phraseology was that you cannot legislate me to lie to my students. If I can't teach ethnic and black history, I can't teach the Constitution. I can't teach anything.
Who said that?
Jesse Gopian. He's out in Seattle. He's an educator. Yeah, from his neck of the
From your school?
Yeah.
What, high school?
Yeah.
Really?
Yeah, he went to McAllister from his high school and wrote a book called More Than a Score, pushing up against test scores, and it is more than a score. And I think about that phraseology often, of course, with Elder, what we've been discussing for years. That is the foundation economically. 5 crops make the Western world wealthy, right? 3/5 compromise. Political alignment, right? The populations, but the 3/5 discount made 8 of the first 12 presidents from the South and some of them from Virginia.
Kept them at superpower.
Right?
Even today.
Even today. With the Electoral College. That legacy is built in, and sometimes it's so built in, it's hard to detect. It's like carbon monoxide.
Ooh, man, that's the deal.
Right, it's like carbon monoxide, and if you don't understand it, it will kill you. Some of us slowly, others of us, I think, more clearly. So I just, it's everything. And so next weekend we have a thing with the Kpetay Summit. I'm going to talk about Charles Hamilton Houston. And who was the black attorney who trained Thurgood Marshall and a cadre of black lawyers to challenge the Brown decision in his life. And he said, I'd rather die on my feet than live on my knees. And that's what he did. That's what he did. Around these questions.
So then, like, that second question, how do you commemorate something that is past and still present?
What's commemoration mean to you?
And that's what you all can also think about too. What does that mean for you? But commemorating is basically is going beyond just remembering, but like actually having some type of some type of celebration or marker to highlight what took place, and then so whether that's a ceremony, whether that is a book. One of the books here we have from Elder, it was written on the politically considered. Is it over there?
Politically considered.
Yeah. So it could be in book form, but like how do you? In this case that we're going to talk about in Birmingham, Alabama, the week that we went down was the commemoration of the bombing of the 16th Street Baptist Church, where it killed 4 little girls, and it injured over 20 other individuals.
You have to start talking about number 2. Go ahead and shift to that.
So I'm gonna be quiet because I'm gonna be talking a lot after this. So I'm gonna be quiet. So like that's the question. Do we? Think about that too. Do we? Is it worth it?
Well, and the only thing for me is like, it's one thing to commemorate if it's not real too. Like when they're doing like stamps and I get this, but it's like it has to be real.
Right.
You know what I mean? Don't just
Do it.
you pacify or do it as just as a symbol. If it's not genuine and real, then I would rather you not commemorate it. Do it out of realness.
What do you guys think about the Juneteenth celebration?
Oh, yeah.
The governor put like $5 million towards that. So it seemed like almost every city in Minnesota is celebrating now.
Yes, exactly.
And then and that was the other thing. It was like there were so many celebrations. It's like what you couldn't even figure out which one to go to because they were all. You know what I mean? It's like it would have been nice to have one big good one.
There you go.
It's like there's one here, there's one there.
Everyone doing one. Everybody. So it's almost diluted.
Yeah.
So you can get dilution. You can get just. There was a stamp on Martin Luther King, or
Right.
Well, Texas is huge on Juneteenth. Texas huge.
The epicenter.
And it's still about making money. It's more about, we can make money off of it. Okay, how can we, let's get some trucks out there,
I think that's the weird thing about celebration and whatnot in under capitalism. It's just like when you have Juneteenth, there's like because I think there's some beauty to some of these Juneteenth celebrations, but then we think about it further, it's just like, oh, this is just to fill somebody else's pockets. At the end of the day, someone who's not as involved in all of this, that's just to fill their pockets and make them look good. So it's like you have to take that in consideration. So I think maybe real commemoration is continuing to fight and carrying on the fight that our ancestors, those who came before us, have been fighting for centuries. I think that might be the only way we can truly commemorate.
So moving beyond just a huge event to commemorate, but actually an ongoing continuum of action.
And kind of like it seemed like that all these celebrations and kind of commemorations had grassroots foundings. They had way more meaning. Cause you grew up in St. Paul? See, remember Martin Luther King before it was official and all that stuff? We used to be marching this little street, go to these different churches, community centers, and get real teach-ins before it became all big and the governor and all these politicians. And there might have been some politicians there, but they weren't the center. Black people were the center. Our struggle was the center. That's what I remember. And then when it got official, boy, boom. You got to do this, you got to do that, it's all this stuff. Like, we should be taken out of school. Yeah, we didn't have to go to school that day, and we just got an absence. That's, hey, you're going to go learn this real stuff. That's what my dad said. So, yeah.
That's the loving tension in all of it. Once you start to commemorate it, and then it becomes a celebration, it becomes official, it can become watered down under the capitalist structure because they can commodify in and everything. 4th of July sale, Memorial Day. It's all about the discounts.
My biggest one right now, because I did grow up in St. Paul, my family is from St. Paul, is the Rondo one, and I'm not knocking them, but my family, my dad, my grandparents grew up on Rondo. And like you said, when it started off grassroots, all that, it was grassroots. Cool. Now all of a sudden I'm like, I don't get it. I mean, like all these different communities, committees, and I'm not saying they're doing better, but it just made it take away from what the whole focus and center was, and it's like they're not talking about the real people that came from Rondo anymore. That's the way and like it's my family grew up on.
And I add a quick preposition about Rondo. Given discussion around the plaza and preserving the history, I cannot salute St. Paul Black community enough historically. It's just been mesmerizing and making the connections and this brother continues to make more and more sense in terms of rooted in a community that was strong, and what they're trying to do, whether it's a land bridge or otherwise, is to reestablish what was taken away with the interstate. But then out of that, all that history with businesses and community centers and connections that was there, it's like, wow.
Yeah, well, that's why I have a problem with it, because I have to tell people, because it's almost like they talk about it as like, let's help save them for Black people out there. Like, they're not there anymore. Yeah, they're not in there. Your benefits, your trying to benefit, kind of like what we're saying. It's like the people were there ain't there no more, so they're not benefiting right now. So anyway, I'm done.
All
No,
over
that's
the
true.
country.
All over.
And I like
The highway went through, you know, divided everything, divestment. You know, it's a similar story, right? But we only get told the single narratives. But we got to realize that this was happening all over, right? Yeah.
Yeah, 35.
Yeah, 35.
Chicago happened twice in Miami.
Yeah. Yep.
95, 395. It's a national project.
Yes.
Thank you. Right.
More than 48,000 miles of interstate.
Yep, and we can't forget that the economic piece that I keep hearing y'all say, the political piece that, you know, is behind all of that. And then the part about, like, you know, doing it to say, well, that's still political, but doing it to save face. You know, the cultural piece, like, oh, we're more inclusive. We are more, you know, recognizing of others, you know, histories and things of that nature. But really, are we? You know, when we're still, you know, we're still taking, and not really honoring them and us in the way that we should be honored.
That kind of goes back to your first question because it does look different in the way that the methods sort of have changed. It's more the system has given more visibility and not actual help in like what we actually need. It's like you'll have black visibility, but that visibility doesn't do anything real for people.
The visibility, but invisibility.
Yeah, it's not actual inclusion, you know, to say.
Like even they were saying about the bridge, my first thing was like, well, are they low-income housing? I mean, like, what's going on now? Like, you know what I mean? Like, who's building them and who's getting the money off of them? I mean,
Yeah,
you know, I'm just saying.
that's real. Yep. So anybody over here want to share anything, any thoughts? You know, it's okay. I just want to make space. Make sure you have space if you want to add or contribute towards anything.
Actually, I never thought about. I thought the Rondo thing was a good idea. And when they explained it, I was like, oh, this is cool. But now that she mentioned what she mentioned, it's taking me back. Is it really good for us? Who is it benefiting? How, in the far run, where is it going? And who is living here now?
Yeah,
And we know who's living here. Primarily.
Right, yeah. My mom still lived in that same house 60 years, and I've seen the neighborhood thing change.
Yeah. Right.
We are going to, man, what a great, deep discussion, which it's nice when you have, you know, a small group because you can actually get into it. And we were able to really, everybody was able to contribute and talk. And so now is the time to share out what it is that you discussed about the first, question and then the second question. So who wants to start?
Exactly. Yeah.
All right. Do I need the mic?
Yes.
All right. So we had a lot of discussion. I ran into the conversation, and some of what I kind of heard was yes, there are quite a few similarities when it comes to the struggle from the 50s and 60s. Jabril, one of the things he brought out was the fact that oftentimes when we talk about the 60s and the 50s, we don't always identify, the 50s and 60s was specifically about black freedom, like making sure that we get a seat at the table. And that is still consistent with to this day's time, and how oftentimes people are more likely to speak about other issues that don't pertain to African Americans, or black people are more likely to speak, and just access to information. Because, like, for instance, like Hamas in Israel, you see quite a few African American commenting on it socially, or they would not speak of the genocide and things that are happening in Africa or on the continent. And one of the things that we talked about is the fact that the information has been propagated. It's not often that which is in the continent of Africa. It's always has to do with out of Ukraine, all the things like that. And one of the things I added on it too was like, there are quite a few similarities between the 50s and 60s because it was primarily ran by young people. I mean, if you take today, Black Lives Matter, and just the resistance in general, when young men was talking about, hey, I'm taking gun to protect myself, folks were saying, hey man, you done lost your mind, put that stuff away back then. Same thing today, when people hear the conversation about defunding the police, they think that's a radical conversation. So both of these movements wouldn't have been successful without the contribution of young people. And then the church too. The church contribution is well recognized, and I would add that people always think that the churches were always in collaboration with these initiatives. That's not true. Like even today, with Black Lives Matters, there are some tension between the leaders and the churches because of the fundamental approach. And that was the same back then, so we don't all have to agree on the same thing, but we can agree on what freedom feels like and looks like, so.
One thing.
Can't believe you said that, do you?
The struggle is kind of running in a circle. So we had Black nationalists in the 50s and 60s that were fighting for African sovereignty, African liberation, but you also had people that are trying to integrate into their master's house. We have the same thing now. The primary form of struggle now is that it's trying to integrate. That's what BLM is. They're trying to get a better seat in their master's house. Right? They want to be treated better. It's not about African liberation. It's not about Garvey or Malcolm anymore. Right? They kind of died that down by not shining the light onto it. And we're not teaching our own people that other side of it, true liberation. And what is that? Coming together as Black people, organizing amongst ourselves. That's the solution of all solutions. Once we do that, we'll get free. So let's stop running in a circle.
Yeah, I agree with that. I want to follow up on that. What we were talking about as a group earlier was that how, to a degree, there's a sense of where we've sort of changed from fighting for freedom and actually being humans to like visibility. Like we have a lot of Black visibility, but not a lot of Black freedom. So we have a lot more of that now, I believe, and now people point to that as progress when it's merely just the trappings of the system.
Any discussion about, commemorating the tension, that commemorating something that's past but still present? What were some of the things you guys talked about that? The aspect of the tension.
My biggest one about that is, like I told them, if it's real commemoration, I can't say the word, instead of kind of like we're saying surface or just to appease, just to say we're doing this to make you all happy, instead of it being a real emotion and action to represent what they're commemorating.
So we didn't get a chance to really, we didn't get a chance to hammer on that a little bit. So at my job, fortunately, I have the privilege to also be on the DEI initiatives. I'm a company because I'm in HR. Unfortunate, it's like the terms, people want to talk about the past, but they want to like talk about it in a way where, for the lack of the people, they don't want to talk about it. So I mean, they really don't, because it's like they want to like make people feel good about hurtful information and just talk about it on the surface level. You want to bring people, and they are very, very intentional about who to bring to speak, because they don't want to stir up anything. So they want people who are politically correct, people who will say the right thing, who will use soft word, who will be cognizant of their audience and not really speak the truth. So with regards to that question, I think it is important that we acknowledge the past, because the only way you can move forward. Well, what's the thing, you guys? What is it? Sinkofu? Yes. Like, you can't really be remorseful about your action if you don't acknowledge what you actually have committed or what you have done. And so, for us to like look forward in terms of commemorating, we literally have to look back and say, hey, man, this is our history. You cannot be ashamed of it. You have to, and people think that when we talk about the past, it's an attack on their ancestors. Well, it's not really. I mean, if anything, you can learn from that and make sure that this does not happen, so anyway.
I think the best way to commemorate the past is to complete the work of our ancestors that were fighting for our liberation. That's by far the best way you can honor them, and the best way you can commemorate our history, by far. And, that's what I hope, like each and every single one of you guys, when you leave here, look to join an organization that's actually working to, help in our liberation of African people. So, yeah.
I agree with everything I'm hearing. It's making me feel really excited, and I'm learning a lot. I think of how commemoration, it's funny because I'm thinking, if I steal something from Dr. Shakita that's not mine, and it's yours, and I have it, you've wanted it for years. Now we're on year 25, I want to commemorate you. And you're just like, I got words for you, because you still got my stuff. Like, it's not even like you don't know where it is and what it is. You know where it is and what it is. It don't make no sense why you don't give it back. It's in my bedroom. You know what I'm saying? That kind of thing, right? And so that's what it's like. It's like just give it back. I don't want you to commemorate me. Give it back. Wow. Give it back my children. Give it back, what I'm saying? All whatever was stolen and taken and the right exploitation, stop. That is the only sufficient way to commemorate something that you continue to do. Is to stop and give it back. Any other form of commemoration, I don't know. Now, if it's Black folks getting together, right, and commemorating, right, the work and furthering the work and talking about, that's different. But if I'm going to be a part of a space that is welcoming me in, my role isn't going to be the same as theirs, which is to be in a space of healing and remembrance. It's going to be, if I'm able to, be in that, if I'm the person who needs to just kind of stop and shift, then that's what it reminds me of repentance and how that means to turn around. And what we want to do is we want to say sorry. We don't actually want to repent and turn around, right? And go the other direction from theft to giving things back. I ain't got nothing that I took from you. I'm just saying in case I did.
Give me my stuff back.
She took your lipstick.
It was a pretty color too.
So we talked about, I think similar to the lines, and we really focused on commemoration for us. So not other people commemorating what has happened, but us commemorating us and the pain that's attached to remembering what has happened in the past, particularly when it's still ongoing. And we talked about our ancestors, our old folks who have forgotten things because they were so painful. And in the midst of forgetting the pain, they have forgotten some of the beautiful things because they had to forget the pain. They had to suppress the pain. And so I was thinking a lot about my mom and my family's history and the history of dementia in our family and how it keeps showing up in what happens to us on a psychological and physiological level when we keep forgetting and keep suppressing because we don't know how to deal with the pain. Yeah.
That was really something. And this is really, a great segue to bring us into this presentation, because we have now entered into this space where we're all deeply connected to this topic of, there's a lot of untold history and untold truths that happened during the time of the 50s and 60s and the civil rights movement that we still don't know. And so now we have a great opportunity to hear from our scholars from Solidarity, Dr. Shakita Kpetay, and I want to call you all kinds of, honorable things, because this is the keeper of the knowledge, Executive Director of In Black Inc., Rekhet, Si-Asar. And they are going to talk to us about their experience in Birmingham recently, where they attended a whole conference about Balm and Gilead, where they commemorated these acts that happened in Birmingham, the bombings, and all the atrocities that we underwent, and really erecting monuments so that we can remember. And I believe that this was a citywide process, but it was also very much connected to the Black experience and led by people who are from that culture. And so we're really honored to have you all come in and share with us. And so I'm going to turn it over to you now. Thank you.
Thank you guys. I'm Rekhet Si-Asar. I'm sister, mother, auntie of a slew of other children. And for the first time in my life, or my husband in my life, empty nesters. So we are celebrating that every day, as much as we can. Although we miss them dearly.
I got a quick question. Is the pillow fighting getting intense?
Actually, I'm like, I found like new features on his face that I didn't know existed. But now this conference, I want to tell you a little about Untold Stories of Civil Rights Era, A Struggle for Human Rights is a title that we kind of collectively came up with and gave it. But it wasn't really untold, or maybe undertold, or maybe forgotten, or maybe things that I didn't hear about, Shakita didn't hear about. But there was a lot of aha in the moments as we was going through this week-long conference. Now, first of all, Sister Ngia, I have to say thank you to, because she sent me a long text. She was like, you need to talk to Rose McGee at the Humanities Center because they're doing this conference in a week, and I told her you're gonna, she should hit you up. And I'm like, I can't go to a conference. I mean, I gotta work every day, and it's for a week long. And so she was like, well, just fill out the application. So I filled out the one-page Google thing, and the next day, Rose calls me and she was like, okay, if you really want to go, we would love to have you, because I didn't know you was an educator. It was supposed to be for educators. They had like 25 educators that they flew out there. They paid for our hotel, food, everything. And it was a way to kind of get Minnesota educators out of our element here into a space where we're actually actively learning what we would be actively teaching. And so that was really beautiful. And I think my application sucked because I did it like in a few minutes, and I really wasn't sure I wanted to go, because there's a balm in Gilead. It comes from the Bible, and I'm a spiritual person, but I'm not a biblical, So that was one of the things. I was like, well, I want to go to a Christian conference. And that it wasn't that, a Christian, I wanted to go to a conference that would actually speak to the liberation of our people. And that's not what I was expecting, but that's what I got. So in kind of giving you a little overview of what that was, I did want to go back to Angia because she then wrote me a list of things that she told Rose about me that I didn't put in my application. I was like, oh, wow, I should have put that in the application. I should have put that in there. She was like, yeah, and I told her you're this, this, this. And actually, Rose probably listened more to her than read my application. She just knew that it was coming through. So I want to say thank you, because that's the only way I'm sure they selected, because my application sucked. Of course, I was trying to think of the work that we're doing in this community is very collective. And so I know that we have to always not just have, when you get a space, you have to make space. And so I was thinking about, okay, I know Sister Shakita, Dr. Shakita, is doing the same work, and we have to have someone who would actually really honor the space and really get whatever it is that's being taught from this experience and bring it back. Because this sister rolled with me, and she had like bags of stuff. She knew everybody's name. She was talking to everybody. She had dates with people. She met people after the conference. She went to their, like she traveled to their home state. I'm like, what the heck? So it's like connecting people that know how to connect to people is important. So I was so glad that she was able to go with me, because I think we had a really great time learning and unpacking some of our history, even though it was heavy.
So, and I would just quickly say hello again, and just formally introduce myself as Dr. Shakita Kpetay. I am an educator, as well as a scholar and a consultant, and my research really focuses on lifting up the experiences of students and teachers in our school systems, and outside too, but really also focus on preserving the education, preserving the memories of our people as well. And yes, I want to say a little bit there, and then I am from Chicago by way of Mississippi. I got to put that in there, on my roots and where I come from, and it's also what drives the work that I do as well. Similar to what Sis Rekhet said, yes, I did not have no clue about this conference, that it was happening. I got a phone call, a text message saying, hey, you going to this conference? You signed up for this? And I'm like, I think so. But then I'm like, I ain't signed up for no conference. Let me go back and look. But either way, I learned about the conference happening. It just so happened that it fit within my schedule for me to go. And I'm like, I'm a believer. I believe in Jesus Christ. And I'm like, man, this gotta be God. Because I'm like, have time and do this. And so anyhow, when Sis Rekhet let me know, I was like, for sure, I'm down. Let's do it. And similarly, I did not know what to expect going in, and I had never been to Birmingham. I've been to Montgomery, but not Birmingham. And so, I didn't know what to really expect. But I walked away full and re-energized and renewed to continue to struggle for our people today. So what we wanted to do is, or what we are going to do, is try to bring in the culture and the energy, which is already there from the pre-discussion. But we wanted to actually bring a taste of that here from Alabama. So the next thing I'm going to show, not right now, but it's a choir. It's a choir that was around during the 50s and 60s, and they would go to the different places where the protests or the marches were going to happen, and they would sing freedom songs while our people were engaged in the struggle. And they
teach the freedom songs.
And to teach
as a way to kind of help
yes.
people almost facilitate the pain that they were about to walk into. So.
Yes, and that's a good point there. And also, so they were called the Alabama Christian Movement Choir, and you'll see it on the next slide. But then, and they have a new name today. But when I tell you, well, I'm gonna stop talking, I'm gonna let y'all experience it. But they were the opening for the conference in terms of, so they opened up with a holy convocation. So I wanted to show that to you all. And we're gonna hit the volume.
You gotta slide over those sisters.
And they got a sister that looked like Aretha Franklin up there. I'll let y'all figure out which one she is. Because I did ask if she's related.
Yes.
Can you turn it up just a little bit more?
Christian Movement for Human Rights. That's the name of the original choir. But before they became the Alabama Christian Movement, they were actually part of the NAACP that was banned in the state of Alabama. So what Fred Shuttlesworth did, which we'll talk a little bit more about who that is and what he did, but they actually created another organization, and they put it underneath that name. And that choir, as I was saying, it was just as crucial for the movement, and they were performing then, and they still are active today underneath the Carlton Reese Memorial Unity Choir. So I'm gonna hand it off to you, Sister Kat.
So I talked a little about, there was 25, there was a delegation of 25 folks that went from here there. As you can see, there's probably, what was it, about 7 or 8 Black folks, and I don't remember what the breakdown was,
and
but
a lot of other
it was
folk. And a lot of other folk?
And a lot of other folks.
Yeah, it was a few of us, and then the majority of,
and
others.
Yeah, some people, teachers from Minneapolis, Fargo, Rochester, like from all over the state.
Yes.
And so they actually had some folks from, I can't remember where this guy was from, the one that looked like, kind of like an outdoorsman.
Here?
Yeah, the little one. that kept talking about the Native communities. Yeah,
I can't think. I know you're talking about.
Yeah, there were some folks that
Sean.
went there to kind of get some ideas of how to work with the population that they have up there as well. So their population isn't a lot of black folks, but it was, folks, Native students and other students of color. But the conference was put together by this beautiful spirit, Dr. Martha Boynton, who is a older woman who just, she almost feel like your granny. It's like she got on the bus and there's no fuss and stuff. She let the folks, do their fussing and just start the whole conference by talking plainly about, this is stuff that has happened to us. This is what we're doing and this is why we're doing it. She connected with Dr. Thomas Wilder, who is actually the acting pastor at Bethel. What's the full name?
It's the historic Bethel Baptist Church, and actually Reverend Dr. Wilder is the reverend of the church that Dr. Martha Boyer is a member of. They both are part of the Community Restoration Fund that is hosted through the church, who put this whole conference on in collaboration with the Minnesota Humanities Center, the Alabama Humanities Center as well. And the way that she talked about it, and this is the first time this conference has ever happened. And it started from her going to another conference that she was hesitant to go to. And she met Kevin at that, and Sister Rose McGee at that conference. And she was like, I have this idea in me, but I don't, I need some help. And they answered that call. And that culminated into this week long of conference, but then also a pre-teacher prep. So wanted to emphasize that part of it. And then there's a Balm in Gilead. I consider myself a Christian, and I didn't even know all the history there. But I'm gonna read what Dr. Boris, how she talked about it. She said, geographically, Gilead is a mountainous region east of the Jordan. Historically, Gilead was a region known for its healing ointments made from resin from the poplar tree. Biblically, the balm of Gilead is a metaphor for God's restoration and salvation. Spiritually, the balm of Gilead represents hope and faith that sustains humanity in times of suffering. And then according to her, she said the city of Birmingham represents every Gilead around the world dealing with issues of race, social justice, and equity, racial trauma, and other forms of PTSD associated with these issues and a need for individual and community healing. So with that, and some of the images there, the one of the PowerPoint slide that was Dr. Hassan Jeffries was one of the keynotes, and his presentation was titled "To Make the Wounded Whole: Confronting Our History." And he went through and talked about he did a really good job in terms of going through and talking about the stages of grief, and also adding that last part of action, because we oftentimes stop at just acceptance.
I think he also did, when you mentioned that people really don't want to hear about our history, that was the context of his speech, because he talked about the Disney version of history that we're constantly, receiving. And then he talked about the real history that has this erasure process that's put around it. And he said that, just even looking at how things unfold, people are not willing to own the fact that they're constantly erasing actual stuff and putting, fake stuff. And he referenced some of the bills that has been enacted since Trump has been in office, and then some of the other politicians in terms of how things have constantly, it keeps going back to what we thought we had already had that fight, and now it's already, back again.
Yep, and then the picture of the woman on my right is Barbara Miss Barbara, is it Sizemore? Sizemore. But basically, she's the daughter of one of the first black trial attorneys in the state of Alabama, who actually helped to bring about the U.S. Supreme Court case that set the precedent for the Civil Rights Act. Mm-hmm. And so, and their home was bombed, I think, twice, and she was present during that time. And the reason why I want to mention that is because at this conference there were so many others who were alive and present and active, or were children of these individuals who were there at the conference presenting. You know, and so we'll talk a little bit more about that too. Yeah. But yeah,
and I think a part of the presentation for folks also was that it was a healing process, because as she was presenting, there were several times where she had to break because, you know, it was almost like it was yesterday for her, as she's talking about, you know, being a little girl and hearing the glass breaking and hearing the neighbors yelling, you know, you need to get out, and, you know, and then she stopped for a moment and then talked about, you know, her dad being of high status in the community was a target on her family. And that went for everybody in Birmingham. It's like all of the folks that were considered to be, you know, somewhat at a particular status, they were constantly targeted.
And one of the books that she wrote, which is called Birmingham's Dynamite Hill, is here. No, and I don't have to lift it up, but some of the texts that are on the tables, these, with the exception of two, one for Elder Mahmoud, and then the other one is about a civil rights activist in Texas. But the other ones are either written by or talking about the civil rights movement. But one is about the freedom riders, which one of the last living freedom rider who lives in Atlanta, that's his book, the memoir of the freedom rider. He's like, I think, maybe in his 80s now. And as I mentioned, Miss Barbara, she documented her history story in this text as well.
Just quickly, has everybody heard of Fred Shuttlesworth?
Yeah, how many people heard of this person?
Show of hands. Okay. Well, I am always like the first one to say, I am not a historian and my memory is not that great. And so I was like, I had never heard of this man. And the funny thing is I kept saying, you know, when we went to the conference, they started out talking about his, all of the things that he had done on behalf of Birmingham. But actually going back, when you get off the plane and you're walking through the corridor in Birmingham, actually it's now called Fred Shuttlesworth Airport. It's named after him, I think, was it Barack Obama probably named it like 2016 or 15 or something like that.
And I think Obama gave him a medal at some point.
Okay.
But he passed away in 2011.
Okay.
Sometime in the early.
But the airport is named after him, and they have like a really nice history of some of the points in his life that he has contributed through his civil rights and human rights fight to our community. So if you ever land in Birmingham, just walk through that hallway really slowly and take a look. But
and these are the images too, like from that memorial. So that the two pictures that are on the left, and then that top right picture, those are from the actual walkthrough memorial that Sis Rekhet is talking about.
Now, this ancestor, he was, you know, like, he was kind of like, what do they call it, like a loose fuse?
Short fuse?
A short fuse. Well, he wasn't an angry man because he promoted the nonviolence during his marches and stuff. But he was really advanced for his for the time. A lot of people did not follow him because of fear. They thought he was just like, okay, he's out there. He's doing really much. Even MLK, who he initially brought to Birmingham, was like, okay, this is a lot. I can do this, but I can't do those. And his response always was that you do this that you feel comfortable with. The rest of this is gonna get done, because I'm gonna do this. And so, his story was so powerful, I felt, because it just showed like, you know, one person, one personality. I mean, he's in this town where he's a pastor, but very little of his congregation actually was like, yay, you know, they were really not excited about following him until I think it was December 25th when his home was bombed. And they bombed the home on Christmas Eve with him and his family in the house. And people thought that, okay, 16 sticks of dynamite went into his house. This man walked out. If you look at the right, that's the house, like the top of the house. That's the roof. Like it was leveled. And they said when they saw him walk out of that rubble and his kids and his wife, they were like, oh, okay, we gotta follow this man because he's protected. His house was right next to Bethel Baptist Church, which was also bombed 3 times. They had set up a post, a watch post, right across the street from the house and the church, which still is there today, that actually show where they actually had brothers, day and night, sat out there, posted on watch to watch his home because he was so important to the struggle.
What did he do in the struggle that caused his house to be blown up, or his church?
He's the one that led the marches. He's the one that did. He actually, when the law was passed that integration should happen, he's the first one that attempted to do it. He drove up to a school with his daughter, his own child, and his own family to integrate his children into the high school. They beat him to a pulp. I think his wife was stabbed.
His wife in the hip.
Yeah, his daughter's foot was broken.
In front of his daughter's right at the school. We'll show y'all some images.
Yes. And so everything he asked the community to do, he did it himself. The lunch counters, everything. He was one of the first people to attempt to do it in that town because he said, it's kind of like with Juneteenth. We're free, but we ain't gonna leave because, we don't know what's gonna happen. And that might not be the case, but, in some cases, it was that people were afraid to leave. They didn't know. Like, if I leave, where do I go? What's gonna happen? And so, his spirit was such that if there was a particular thing that the community needed, he was gonna actually activate it. He was the activator. And it was funny because even though I didn't know who he was, I remember seeing him in all of the photos with MLK. He's like sitting next to him in his press conferences, and that's because he was the actual engineer of a lot of the movement that MLK took and used. And in meeting his family, there's not a bitterness, but they felt like his name was not shared in the way it should be with the community because
he was the one who kept inviting MLK to come to Birmingham to actually really activate the community. And so we oftentimes hear about the letter for Birmingham jail, right? We oftentimes hear that, but there wouldn't be no letter for Birmingham jail if there was no Fred Shuttlesworth in the community behind him who was doing fighting way before then. And Shuttlesworth, he came from his previous church, but he specifically came there to stir up some trouble there, right? And to not just talk about integration, but the sanitary conditions in which our people were living in these segregated, in some ways, slums too in the area. Yeah. So, do we want to go ahead and show the video? Okay. May, can you click on the video?
Black people had all of the burdens of citizenship.
This is Dr. Martha.
Very few of the privileges. Everybody pays taxes. If there's a war, we all go to war. But then you realize that your school has one typewriter and another school right down the street almost has roomfuls.
You wake up in Jim Crow Birmingham and you go to work, get a job that pays you less,
He works at TCNI, but he just have a job in name. 50 cents an hour, working with that steel like that. I got sick of it. You get sick.
During that time, we had to get up and get white folk a seat. Even if we paid the money. Sometimes you pay your money, you have to get off, go back around, get in on the side door.
The art of segregation limited my thinking of greater depths, higher heights for myself. Because when you're treated as second-class citizen, there are times that you feel like second-class citizens. You just feel the everyday prejudice.
You wake up in the morning, and it's always the same old thing over and over again. The Klan walk around parading, and right there in Smithfield, parade right down with the police leading the procession.
You can understand why people felt we could no longer wait. If you don't bring attention to an unjust law, the law will never be challenged.
Segregation was a thing so sacred in Birmingham and so solidly in the minds and the psychics that nobody's supposed to tamper with it.
Wherever there was a struggle going on anywhere in the United States, Reverend Shuttlesworth was going to be there.
An ordinary man with an extraordinary call on his life.
When some leaders said things, it may or may not happen. But when Fred Shuttlesworth said it, you could depend on it.
You know, I've been called crazy to the point of insanity. And I got to the point that if I hadn't gone to jail ever so often, I'd begin to get to jailhouse. It's just life for me.
My man just walked up to a school to take care of his children.
When we pulled up, I thought to myself, Lord, have mercy. And they immediately attacked him. Brass knuckles, lots of shouting and cursing.
Admitted to the hospital, back out fighting again. Home got bombed, back out fighting again. The Klan put his name on the bomb and God erased it off. You know, people don't get saved from the middle of bombs unless God wants them to be saved for some purpose.
Dr. King came in at the invitation of Dr. Shuttlesworth. That's why he came to Birmingham. Bull Connor and the city thought they had beaten us down.
He wanted to leave the world better than he found it.
We needed someone in Birmingham who wasn't afraid, and we found that man in Fred Shuttlesworth.
This is actually a documentary that I think it was released in the beginning of the year, maybe January. So you should be able to kind of look on YouTube and you should be able to find it. But a few of the people that were talking in there, we also met at the conference. You can go to the next one. Yeah, we'll talk about them as we go along. Yeah. Right. Yep. Okay. So if you see in the middle, that's Bethel Baptist Church. Right next to it is the parsonage where Fred Shuttlesworth and his family's home was. And right now they just have the frame as a form of a commemoration of that spot. But if you look at these black boxes, they're like granite stone boxes. Those are the number of times and the dates when the church and the house was bombed.
So there is the first bomb was there December 25th, 1956. The second one is June 28th, 1958. And then the third one is December 13th, 1962.
So they didn't stop trying.
And they still have church in that building to this day.
Yeah.
And they're working at the bottom to use part of the bottom space as like a kind of like a museum, a community, historical space to go. And then, and as I mentioned, that's still used today. So when we got there, our very first stop was not, although the conference was held at the hotel, the teachers part of it started at the church. So we went to the historic Bethel Baptist Church,
And there were what they call master teachers who had participated in a prior institute with Dr. Boyer. And so one teacher was facilitating a lesson, and I took a picture of the slide that's a quote from Dr. Martin Luther King, the letter from Birmingham jail, which stood out to me, and it says, "Shallow understanding from people of goodwill is more frustrating than absolute misunderstanding from people of ill will. Lukewarm acceptance is much more bewildering than outright rejection." So while we were there too, we got a chance to visit the 16th Street Baptist Church as well as Phillips High School. So Phillips High School is briefly what we were talking about with Fred Shuttlesworth, went to integrate that school, which was predominantly white at that time, with his daughter, which is white, white, I was like, but I'm like, white at the time. And he got beaten like really badly, as well as his wife, as we mentioned, got stabbed in her hip as they were trying to take their children inside the building. So the picture at the bottom.
His daughter's foot because.
Oh yeah, can you say that again?
He broke his daughter's foot. She tried to get out of the car to help her parents, and someone had slammed the door on her foot, breaking her ankle.
She ended up going to school.
No.
And they actually ended up going to, you'll see on the next slide, Parker High School, which was the school for black children at that time. But the picture at the bottom is of the actual school building, and you see with the car, there are white supremacists with Confederate flags actually outside of that school building. And that school was threatened with a bomb too. So that's, on this day here, they were actually evacuating the school building because there was a threat that it was going to be bombed.
And actually, when they did finally integrate, the bus drivers would, they would bring the students there. Most of the time, the black students would, of course, sit in the back, but they would drop the white students off at the front door and keep going and let the black students off 4 miles out so that they can walk back to school. So just, when people say little, it's like
that's not little. I've been dragging that bus driver with me that 4 miles. Dragging by his feet.
That's interesting you said that. We'll talk about that later. You said you would be dragging the bus what?
Bus driver with me.
Bus
by his
drivers
feet.
at that time were actually, I don't know what they call it, like almost inducted. Deputized, where they had gun, they were able to carry guns to really close, and they
that makes a
enforce
difference.
the segregation laws. So your, saying no, I'm not moving was not going to be an option because you were moving, or you were going to be dragged off, or you would be
shot,
which was another part of the actions that were taken.
And that's what, I'm going to go into detail about that. So the 16th Street Baptist Church. So while the Fred Shuttlesworth and the others were, protesting and marching, the young people were, they actually included the young people inside of the movement because they knew that with the young people, one, they young, but two, that they cannot hold everybody in these jails as well. So there were quite a bit of youth who were activated. They had the Children's Crusade, and they will actually meet at the 16th Street Baptist Church and the historic Bethel Baptist Church. Those were actually locations where where the activists were meeting to plan out and prepare for events. So the youth were going there, and they were using it as the space there. So the 16th Street Baptist Church is on one side, and then you have the Kelly Egram Park, that was where they sick dogs, and it was brutal. But that's where, so you have the church, the park, and then you have currently the Civil Rights building that is directly across, facing the front of the building. But anyhow, that on September 15th of 1963, it was a Sunday, and it was I forgot the exact time, but it was at 10. It was a little bit after 10 o'clock, right when they were supposed to start youth service, that the church was bombed. And there were over 20 young children injured. 4 little girls were killed, were murdered. 1 survived. And then the 2 young boys, they were not there in the bombing, but a few hours later, those 2 boys were killed, one by a white supremacist, and then the other by a police officer. So Johnny Robinson and Virgil Ware, many people don't know about them, or they don't hear their names. When we were there, we got a chance to learn about them, and they had, at the bottom of the 16th Street Baptist Church, they have a part where they commemorate and talk about this history. So they have 2 interns, 2 teenager interns, black interns, who actually looked into their story and started doing more research there. So now they are part of more of the narrative. So that's why we wanted to have that image of not just the 4 little girls who were murdered, but also the 2 young men as well. So Addie Mae Collins, Denise McNair, Carol Robinson, and Cynthia Wesley lost their lives on that day, along with the 2 young men.
So the young men were in the church or not in the church?
No, they were not in the church. They were not too far. They was at, I think one was at a gas station, and then another one was a little bit further away. But they were killed on that same day.
And by white people just randomly?
Yeah, one a white supremacist and another a police officer. Yeah. What were their ages? Their ages,
they were both high school.
Yeah, I was gonna say they were teenagers.
Yeah.
They were teenagers, I believe. Not to our knowledge for the boys. For the bombing, they did eventually arrest. Well, one person ended up dying at some point, but they did eventually arrest. They did catch the other ones and they charged them, but I think they still didn't serve as much time as well. So we're gonna keep going for the sake of time. So, Sister Kate, you gonna go?
Well, earlier you saw that young lady right there on your right, standing next to Parker High School picture. That's Ruby Shuttlesworth. She is the youngest daughter of Fred Shuttlesworth. And pictured in the top is Ruby, her sister Patricia, and then Patricia's daughter, as well as Sister Rose McGee from the Humanities Center and myself. Their story, Ruby's in her late 70s, and I think her older sister, Patricia, just made it into the 80s. Patricia made it really clear that she doesn't talk about the experience. She doesn't talk about what has happened. The pain is she doesn't share it with her children. She's an educator. Actually, 5 of the children of Fred Shuttlesworth are educators. And I know Patricia mentioned that she doesn't include it in her, or hasn't in the past included it in her teachings. Part of the trauma and just the intensity of the experience has left her to where she can't formulate words around it. Ruby, on the other hand, is constantly digging and wanting to pull things together, want to do a book, want to do this. You know, you heard her in the film earlier. She's really clear about the fact that she has to pass on this experience, as painful as it was. She remembers, at some point when actually she's pictured in the back there. If you see her dad in the newspaper in the front, the little girl all the way in the back is Ruby Shuttlesworth. And she said that was the day when the mob, had beaten her dad, and just the trauma of seeing, and we saw like a quick video slide of the beating, and it was just like I mean, mom was out there welding her big old purse. I mean, she was taking some clothes out, but they were clearly outnumbered. And so we just wanted to make sure that you got a sense that there were people. I mean, these are real people and they still exist and they have these stories. Some of them have it in their hearts and they can't like share it. And then there's others that were just, you know, ready to like, I need to say what I saw. I need to say what's been done to me. The photo on the bottom.
Yeah, so one of the photos is of the pharmacy across from a hotel that was owned by A.G. Gaskin, who was one of like the businessmen who had a lot of money at the time. But what he did was he used his wealth to like buy spaces to use for the people who were traveling into Birmingham to stay, right? Because during that time,
hotel, everybody from Aretha Franklin, I mean, James Brown, everybody came. Anybody black that came through, instead of going to one of the white establishments where they had to go through the back door or they had to face whatever, they came to that motel.
And he actually used a lot of his funds to like bail out folks as well. And so he was like the economic engine behind.
So he owned the Citizens drugstore. He also owned a larger building that was kind of like a community space. And then there was on the block, like you see the drugstore by itself. At one point, there used to be like buildings.
Buildings.
There.
And one thing I was gonna say is the reason why we have it here is because while the family of Gaston does not own it, another black person owned that space and has continued to utilize that space for the community. And then the picture next to that pharmacy is me, along with two of the founders of the Girl Trek movement, which really focuses on the health and well-being of black women. And so they were one of the keynote speakers. And they also, they usually organize the Black History boot camps in terms of walking and learning about our different histories. But then they also recently purchased a building in Montgomery, Alabama, one of the buildings that used to be used to organize around. So while they were there, they unveiled that information. And so they shared that that's part of, their goal is to continue the fight and struggles. Not only for the history of our people and talking about that, but in particular focusing on black women and our well-being.
I didn't say anything about Parker High School. That was the black high school in Birmingham. On the other side, you saw Phillips, which was supposedly integrated. After Phillips was integrated, they actually, after all of the schools were integrated, they renovated Parker, and if you can see, it almost looks like, I prefer to go there. But they said, I think it was Bishop, one of the elders that spoke earlier, the bald-headed guy. He was Martin Luther King's driver.
Bishop Woods.
Bishop Woods. He was Martin Luther King's driver towards the end of his life, and talked a little about his experience. But he mentioned that at that time he went to high school. Every black person went to high school there, and at the time he went, his graduating class, like the seniors, was about 1,000 people, because that was the only black high school
to go to.
I am still.
Let me go back.
Can we pause
that, please, Mick? Okay. So before we hear from Miss Georgette Norman, why did we go back?
I did miss something.
You want to go back to the other one? The other slide before?
It doesn't matter with the slide. I think one of the, we kind of just had like, a snapshot of a few different of the events that we were able to go to. One of the ones that was really moving for me was a presentation by this Dr. Danielle McGuire. She's actually a white woman who talked about the sexualized violence against black women, and how prior to things like the bus boycott and all of those boycotts, that was the main thing that actually kept the civil rights movement moving, because black men and black women were really concerned about the sexualized violence against black women. At that time, Rosa Parks, even before she sat on the bus, a lot of people just know her as, you know, as a person who sat down on the bus because she was tired. She was actually an investigator with the NAACP and was sent out to investigate the gang rape of Racy Taylor, who was a black woman. They have a Netflix special on her currently, but Racy Taylor was raped by six white men, who, and just to kind of, you have to look at the story, but just over 20 years they tried to get some form of justice for her. Ended up where there was no charges brought. They were fined. Each one of the six white men was fined $100. So she got $600. And the only reason why they ended up finding them, they didn't arrest them, they didn't pick them up. They knew who they were, they had their names, they knew where they lived. They didn't pick them up until the story actually made it to Pittsburgh on the front cover of one of the newspapers that the NAACP put out. And then it circulated to where outside of the country, people started hearing about this case. And that was during the time, like, it was, I think, 1944, around 1944. And so it was right around that time where a lot of the soldiers were coming back home. And they're like, if we're somewhere protected, we're fighting for this country, and we're protecting the honor of white women, or white men to keep their women and children safe, and we can't keep our own women safe, we're not doing it. And at that time, they also had like over 30 Belgian soldiers that some of the black men were fighting with abroad, who wrote letters to our government saying that, how is it possible that you're fighting these international wars and you are treating your people who are out here, supporting you like this? And so that was one of many cases. After 20 years, they had to kind of look to see, okay, what's another case that they can use as a way to move past that particular, because everything got stalemated. And so the next case was, I think there was this, well, I started looking to see, like, when was the first white man actually charged with rape? Because sexualized violence was used to keep black men in their place by white women crying rape, and then it was used to keep, to brutalize and demean and demoralize black women. And so it had like two purposes that it served. And at that time, they had a case called, is anybody familiar with the Scottsboro 9? Okay, the 9 young men, all under 20 years old, I think they were all teenagers, who were arrested and jailed, given electric chair sentence. They were sentenced to death for raping 2 white prostitutes who allegedly raped 2 white prostitutes who were riding the train at the same time they were trying to ride, and they were all kicked off because there was some some disagreement or commotion between the black men and some other white men that were on there. But since they were kicked off the train the same time the white women were, the white women claimed that, part of the reason why they got kicked off because they were raped. And so those men, it took 20 years for them to actually be released from it. They were all jailed, all 9 of them. And so people kept citing that case as, how is it that you have this, this is supposed to be a human rights thing. You're talking about protection of women. This is supposed to be a case where all women aren't black women, women. And that's when the whole piece around, well, no, they're not really perceived as women in the eye of the law. And so, and I'll be brief, but another case that came up was, let's see, what was her name? Young lady who was also raped by 4 Betty Jean Owens. Betty Jean Owens was one of 2 women who were abducted out of the car of they were with their 2 dates, I think. All 4, 2 men, 2 women. They were on the FAMU campus. 4 white men came, gunpoint, told the men to leave, told the women to get out, and attempted to take them to another location to rape them. One of the women was able to escape, and the only reason why these men were actually prosecuted and charged was because they had her in the car, tied up, had already raped her several times. The 3 that got away went to the police, and they had an intern police that was on staff at that time, a young guy who ended up calling for backup. And when he called for backup, they ended up having to, they followed the car and stuff. They actually did some police work. And in finding out about, this woman, the men thinking that, there's nothing's gonna happen because nothing ever does. They actually signed confessions that they did rape her, they did take her from one location to another, abduct her, but they were laughing all the way to jail because, they're not gonna be held. And this was in 1959, so that's the first case that I found that a white man was actually prosecuted and charged and actually had to do the time for the rape of a black woman. So I said all of that because when we hear about the civil rights, one of the things that Dr. McGuire's book pointed out is that a lot of the sexualized violence was taken out of the other violence that was waged against us when we talk about the civil rights. We hear about the brutality, the spitting, the beat downs, but we don't hear about the sexualized part. Women started the bus boycott because they were the home attendants. They were working in white women's homes. So they were taking the bus to and from where they needed to go to. They were going to, and so often, like I said, the bus drivers were deputized. So they had guns, they had billy clubs, and they could get you on and off the bus if they wanted to. So there was scores of stories with black women talking about trying to ride the bus, being harassed, molested, being, the bus driver might pull up, drop his pants, stand there, masturbate in front of them. Just really lewd and rude and nasty behavior. And that was things that the men were like, it's like we're still in bondage. We can't protect our women. I mean, they have to go out and work, and they're, having to deal with these conditions. So when the women stood up first and said that we're not riding the bus, and that happened after not a final, but yet another rape case where they found that the only way, it was a well-known white man in the community that raped a young, I think 17-year-old girl, and just went about his business, dropped her off in the street, went about his business and was like, this is, nothing's gonna happen to me. And so the NAACP, the women, the community came together and said, you know what, there was nothing they could do because they wouldn't charge him, the police wouldn't pick him up, they wouldn't do anything. So they decided what they would do is nobody would buy from his store, even though his store was the only store in their small local town. So everybody stopped buying. And economically, they put him out of business. And when they saw that, they used that same model when you're looking at the bus boycott to really put, the city on notice that we're not riding that bus if we have to put up with these conditions. And so the civil rights movement for us was a continuation of the human rights movement. Our women, our men were not treated as human rights. And then there's the flip side, of course. I'm not gonna get into, but
and so we're gonna we will end on hearing from Ms. Georgette Norman's words. She was also a person who lived through that time as a young person, and she was part of the one who really drove the work of putting together a museum
focused on Rosa Parks and I think Montgomery, and has been doing work since, even though she's retired. She was at the conference to hold space and healing circles for those who were, who are survivors from during that time period. So, Meg, can you play that video, please? Oh, okay, we go back. There you go.
I am still here, and I too belong. I remember the hoes, the dogs, and billy clubs. I will use those memories as tools to dismantle their tragic legacy. I'm a survivor, shifting my gaze to a restored community.
And so we do have these questions like, where do we go from here, restored community or preservation? We did have an amazing session that was held by one of the directors of the African American Historic Preservation Center, who has been really instrumental in bringing billions of dollars to our community to help document our stories, but also restore and preserve the buildings across the U.S. And so we did want to, we put this in here because we want y'all to hear the song. They sang here, Glory. So you'll get a chance to hear that, and then we'll wrap up and have some more discussion.
Because a lot of these women are like 60s and over.
Yeah.
And they're just like,
they got walkers. Yeah.
Oh yeah, they didn't bring the walkers up instead. You know,
one day when the glory comes, it will be ours, it will be ours. Oh, one day when the war is won, we will be sure, we will be sure. Oh, glory, hands to the heavens, no man, no weapon formed against us, glory is destined. Every day, women and men become legends. Says the Lord is not scared, become blessed. The movement is a rhythm in us. Freedom is like religion to us. Justice is just a position in us. Justice for all, justice is living in us. One son God is buried and revisited in us. True and living in us. Resistance is us. That's why Rosa set up the bus. That's why we walk through America with our hands up. When it goes down, we pull it and up. They say stay down, and we stand up. Shots were on the ground, the cameraman up. King wanted to the mountaintop, and we ran up. One day, all right. It will be ours. Oh, one day. The war is won. We will be sure. We will be sure. Glory, on hundreds of miles. From dark roads, heroes to become a hero. Facing the league of justice, his power was a beat. Enemy is legal, the king became free. Saw the face of Jim Crow under a law. Our biggest weapon is to stay peaceful. We sing, our music is the text that we bleed through. Somewhere in the dream we had an epiphany. Now we right the wrongs in history. No one can win the war individually. It takes the wisdom of the elders and young people's energy. Welcome to the story we call victory. My eyes have seen the glory, the coming of the victory. One day.
Take care of while we're getting ready to do our closing. Just a little bit of conversation about what we've heard, and we could probably do it as a collective, since it's such a small group. But we do have a tradition where we pass the pail or the bucket or whatever we got at the moment, and throw a little something in there, whatever you can, to help us to appreciate the space that we get to hold here at HSRA School and the staff that set up for us and stay here while we're here at the new school. So it's really an honor that we get to be here, and that's just our way of saying thank you for letting us be here. And we also have on the tables QR codes. We do want your feedback. There's a survey code, and then if you have never been to a new school or you're not getting our emails or contacts, you should scan the sign in so that we can have your contact. I guess we can get it from either thing, right? Yeah. So if you do the survey, we'll also have your email, and then we'll put you on our email list, and so that way you can stay in touch with us. We're getting ready to do our retreat and plan for next year. And so we're looking at some different things that we might do next year. So just stay tuned, and we'll see what the new school is gonna look like next year. But just really want to thank you all for coming out. Now, we do have questions that we wanna talk about. So, does the preservation of Black history and culture, which includes buildings, have to come at the expense of investment in Black communities? Maybe you might need to explain that. What does it mean to look like to preserve and restore Black history in the community? And when I did find what I wrote about Sister Rekhet, but I mean, not only is she a school psychologist of, I don't know, probably double-digit years. But she also is the founder, co-founder, and executive director of In Black Ink, which is about preserving our stories here locally in the state of Minnesota for Black people. And it's a really important work that they're doing to make sure that we know our stories and that they can be heard and that we can get strength from them. Like we have hearing all of this, these untold things that we didn't know about and that are buried and hidden, that are being revealed about many people and many stories. That's what In Black Ink is doing for us. And so,
you want to open it up?
Yes.
So, would like to comments, answers to those questions in the few minutes that we have.
Explain that first question a little bit.
So the first question really stems from there is funding that is available to preserve our history and culture through buildings. But then there's also this conversation of, well, if you're going to take all this money, or this tension, I wouldn't say conversation, this tension of, if you're going to take all this money and invest in the building, what about the current struggles and the needs and the realities of our Black community now? And so that question really stems from that tension of, is there even a tension there, or can we do both? And this is also a time where you all can open up and ask those questions as well, or make comments based off of what we share with you all. So,
we can do both. I mean, they can send billions of dollars over to Civil War, you know what I mean? And they always make you think, I got to take out of this pot to do we definitely can do both. It's not take out of one pot and go into another. There's definitely enough money. It's just how it's allocated.
We got a new doctor in the house is leaving too as well. Congratulations. Newly minted.
If I can follow up on that point, I honestly don't think we have a choice but to invest in both. Or we don't have a choice in that it's so important to invest in both, and at the same time, if we're really doing the work, if we're investing in Black communities, we're also investing in Black history. We're holding these events for the Black community, and that in turn propagates the teaching of Black history. We continue to teach Black history, that's creating spaces for the Black community. So in a way, we don't have a choice but to do both. And by doing one or the other, we're doing both.
Yes, I agree. But I'm gonna focus more on question number 2, because I totally agree. I mean, it's like one of those things that want us to feel like one thing is better than the other, one thing has more value than the other. I think it's the work of the devil. The amount of energy that's been invested, resources that's been invested in holding us back, erasing our history and all those different things, destabilizing our families, our homes, our community, infrastructure that has been built, defunding certain resources, making us feel like if you don't excel in this area, we'll take the resources from you and then expect you to keep performing. So I agree, like, it's not one or the other. As far as question number 2, I just had an opportunity to visit, to do like the historic African American HBCU college tour, bringing young people from the metro, which was primarily African Americans and Africans in the East Coast. It blew my mind. As an Afro study major, I personally wish I would have gotten my degree of education at HBCU, because it's like, the criticism about how expensive it is and all those things, and how whatever criticism people have is because they don't know. And for me personally, I never had a criticism, but I just didn't know about it before I chose a college to go to. And I think that when you go over there, you really do see and feel Black excellence in a way that when people want to talk about Black history, you just sit and look at them, it's like, you must not know what you're talking about. For Black folks who will step on, walk, divested, and were able to build this type of institution that created like pioneers that you cannot talk about. You cannot talk about democracy in America and the fundamental principles of who we stand on without these individuals, because everything our founders put in the book, it was just sitting over there. It was Black educators, Black activists that gave it life and birth. And so, I don't know. I mean, I think it's a start. How do we do that? We start investing, and then it's really hard because a lot of Black folks are struggling to make ends meet. But I think if we start prioritizing and investing in our existing institution, and not just that, but encouraging our children, because it starts at home. If you don't educate your kids about this institution, they will not know about it. So it starts at home with the books, your work, and I'm stuck. I'm talking too much.
Right. And another thing about your husband, I think, is that your last name is Liberian, correct?
Yes.
And the K in Kpetay is silent. Is that correct?
Thank you.
Thank you. So it's not Kpetay, it's Kpetay. But besides that, also our own families, to preserve the knowledge, the history in your own families, your own family archive that you pass down from generation to generation. And so there's special boxes and materials you put your stuff in, where there are pictures, documents, titles, that high school report card, that birth certificate, that whatever, that uniform, that hat from the Elks or the Eastern Stars or whatever. You got to preserve that and pass that on and put in these special boxes so family members don't throw those away. And you pass those on. It's a blue box, that's family archive, that's treasure, pass it on. These pictures, they ain't no more photo albums. These are archive albums that have names on it, dates, what the event was, where it was at.